A very warm welcome to episode number dos of the Aligned Founder podcast titled, What is Breathwork? Now, my intention in this episode is to give you a bit of an overview of all the different styles and types of breathworks. It's something that's becoming very popular in the world right now, from our friend Wim Hof in the Netherlands jumping in the ice to various different videos and reels on Instagram, on YouTube, showing people doing all sorts of fun and crazy and wild things with breath. So in the same way that there was a time when yoga and meditation were considered weird and crazy and reserved for hippies and monks, and then they became part of pop culture and the conversation around mental and physical health, I believe that breathwork is the new tool that's basically sweeping the world. And as a result, I want to, hopefully educate you a bit more about all the different styles and types so that you have a bit of a roadmap of how to approach this modality in this field and to find which style of breathwork suits you and your lifestyle and your goals best. So the intention of this episode is to break down the pros and cons of the different styles of breathwork, specifically mind and body-based breathwork. These are two different schools of breathing, and what are the ways that they work. I'm a practitioner that's more focused on the body-based side of breathwork. So spoiler alert, I'm going to be a little bit more detail-oriented around that side of things because it's something that I really love, but I will try to give equal airtime to both styles and also give you some practices and demos that you can try. As well as telling you some of the contraindications and cautions around breathwork and how you can go about trying this safely at home or with a experienced practitioner. So, want to start off by explaining a little bit of my experience of finding breathwork and how I came across this. So, best way to do that would be to say back in 2016, I had been traveling the world as a professional musician. I've been playing these very high energy concerts all around the world and, really enjoying life, partying, having a great time, and really living out a lot of those dreams of being a professional musician. So along the way, there was a dark side to that. And that was that at a certain point, my body just got so exhausted and I'd been pushing and pushing. And at a certain point, I kind of just had a bit of a burnout. It just kind of all crashed. So that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs can also relate to, which is this experience of really overriding our body's natural signals and keeping on going because we feel like we have to. And there's a lot of, responsibility resting on our shoulders. And the result for me was a large health crash where I had to take a number of weeks away from any work and I really was not feeling very good. And after that, I would say for probably about a 3 to 4 year period, I was in this limbo where I was functioning, but I was not feeling at all my best. And I knew I didn't feel my best. I was having these periods of dizziness and lightheadedness and sometimes some blurry vision, short of breath. And I was doing a lot to just be able to function in my job and to be able to go and to, play my concerts, but then I'd have to come home and crash afterwards. And, life was good, but it was still at times very challenging as well. And I kind of was really feeling like there's got to be something else under the surface that I'm not seeing here. So that led me down a path of wanting to explore different modalities to find out what's really behind this. So that led me to finding originally meditation, and I was doing a lot of Joe Dispenza's meditations. Led to me finding Reiki, which is like an energy healing modality. I was doing sound healing in India, did like a 2-week course there, and that was a really profound experience. And a lot of these things were really, helping and supporting, but they weren't really, I still didn't feel like they were fixing things on a deeper level. Like they were kind of more like band-aids. I felt good after them, but it wasn't really changing anything on the deeper level. Now, another thing I came across in that time was what I would call now mind-based breathwork. So that was at the time the Wim Hof technique, and that was something that I used to do sometimes before I had a concert or before I had a big event, and I would do a few rounds of Wim Hof breathing, and in the moment, it would make me feel really good. So I said, wow, this breathwork thing, there could be something here. And what I noticed was maybe 1 hour after doing it, I would be kind of back to feeling as I had before. But I could use this breathing technique as a bit of a quick hit. And so that kind of piqued my interest. But I did also feel at the time that there wasn't anything deeper changing as a result of that breathing I was doing. So that led to me then in beginning of 2020 going to Bali and I was there to play music, but I'd been introduced to this guy called Edward Dangerfield, who is a breathwork, or specifically a body-based connected breathwork practitioner. So I was introduced to him, I booked in a session, and I came in and we talked a bit, and I kind of lay down on the table, and he said, just close your eyes and I'll guide you. So all I can say is about 1 hour later, I opened my eyes and it was like the world was different. That's the best way I can describe it. The feeling I had in my body was unlike anything I'd remembered from previously. The colors outside were brighter. It was like I'd woken up and I was on some kind of psychedelic trip because everything was so vivid and bright. Now, if I was to look back on that experience now with the knowledge I have now, I would say that that was me coming out of basically a chronic fight or flight state. So I had been living in this high tone, go, go, go mode, like can't stop. And it was for a moment my body had found a state of really deep, deep rest and relaxation. And that created it planted a really deep seed in me, in that I just knew that this was different. And I said, I don't know exactly what's happening, but it just feels amazing. So I'm going to do more. So what happened was I started then every week to go to either a one-on-one facilitated session or a group session of this connected breathwork in this style. And I started to really uncover some really interesting things. So my second session, I kind of thought, well, I've done this before. It's going to be more of the same. And what I was really surprised about was the second session and then the third session and the fourth and on and on. Every single session was completely different. And what came up, some of them were very physical experiences where I was feeling a lot moving in my body and energy moving up and down. Other times it was very visual. I was seeing images. I was seeing memories or future images. Or even like otherworldly things. Other times it was very emotional. I would relive a past memory and I'd be crying or I'd be laughing or screaming, or emotions would start to come out to me. And the deeper I went, I found the deeper my experience in each of these fields. And again, I wasn't really able to explain what was happening or why. It just felt amazing, and so I kept going. And it was only a few months later that in the midst of a very challenging period in my life, when I went through a big breakup from a romantic relationship, that I realized the depth of the work that had been kind of happening without me realizing, where there was this really challenging situation that had brought up a lot of my old wounds, like really core stuff. And it was a really crazy whole situation, to be honest. And for some reason I noticed the part of me that wanted to run away and hide and pull away and, just kind of be in the victim mode and be angry and scared and fearful. And then I noticed this completely other part, which had kind of come online, that was just very comfortable to sit in the discomfort and was comfortable to lean in and to actually continue to put myself out there and feel confident and feel enough and feel worthy, which was just unheard of. And there was a lot of people that I was speaking to at the time who knew the depth of the challenge of this situation. They were saying, how are you even getting out of bed in the morning? This is crazy what you're experiencing. And for some reason, there was just a deeper level of resolve that had been developed in me in these past months of doing this breath work. And this was really life presenting me like a real test, a challenge that I could then put to use all the skills and tools that I'd been learning up to that point. So that was really when it was after that period passed, I really recognized that it wasn't just, kind of spiritual woo-woo stuff, that it was actually some deep changes happening in my body and my nervous system. And I said, this is something that actually I really want to delve deeper into. I'd been doing, coaching in the past, supporting people. I'd been mentoring musicians for many years. And I'd seen time and time again where, people would understand things in their mind, but nothing would change in their life. And this was something I really felt for me, that this had created really deep change you could even say on a neuroplastic level. So that was what really inspired me to go down the path of studying to be a practitioner in this work. And since then I've been teaching and supporting trainings for about 3.5 years now. And it's been a very fulfilling process to not just have that experience for myself and get to new levels of depth within me, but also with my clients and now with the students, and now to bring this work to Berlin and to Europe, where we've been running retreats for the past year. It's been great. And I hope that in the next part now, where I describe the different techniques, you can understand a bit more of what's going on behind the curtain in this big mystical thing that we call breathwork. So first things first, I want to break this down really simply, because there's a lot of people that say, I've done breathwork, I know what that is. And I want to create a very clear distinction between the two different styles of breathwork, and it might help you to understand which one you have maybe come across or tried before, and maybe a bit more of this mystical thing that I'm talking about that I experienced over the last years in my time in Bali. So the first style of breathwork we're going to talk about today is mind-based breathwork, which I kind of alluded to before. And that's any technique, any breathing practice, which involves me bringing my mind's focus to my breathing. Okay? So every breath I'm controlling with my conscious mind. Now, these are really great techniques. They can be anything from the Wim Hof breathing technique, which is a fast and rapid inhale, exhale. It could be a yoga pranayama, which again scales anything from activating breaths to relaxing breaths and moving breath into different areas of the body. It could be something like a box breath, which is something that we use to regulate and balance our system. And this basically, like I said, is any technique which involves me controlling my breathing. Now, what's great about a mind-based breathing technique is that it means that every morning when I wake up, I can sit down on my cushion and I can do a technique, whatever is required or what I feel I need that day. So maybe in the morning, if I'm feeling sluggish or slow, I can use an activating breath to wake me up. So an example of that will be what's called a breath of fire. So I'm going to give you a quick demonstration of what that sounds like now. So the breath of fire is a quick pulsing exhale, and it sounds a bit like this. So what I'm doing there is I'm using my mind to pulse my diaphragm for maybe 1, 2, 3 minutes. And what that will do is you can already kind of hear it's very fast and activating. And that's going to start to move blood, move oxygen through my system and make me feel more active. So that's a really nice mind-based breathing tool I can use maybe after lunch if I'm feeling, a bit tired or whatever. I can use it to wake me up. Now, another mind-based technique I could use is a balancing breath, which is a box breath. So that would be equal counts for inhale. So maybe inhaling for 4 seconds, 2, 3, 4. Pause at the top, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Pause at the bottom, 2, 3, 4. And if I was to do that consistently for a number of minutes, we'll say, 5 to 10 minutes, then what would start to happen is I'm balancing the length of time my body is in this activating inhale with a relaxing exhale. And what that will start to do is, over time, is to bring my body into a greater state of harmony and balance. And then when I stand up, I'm going to feel more regulated. So that's, again, a great practice I like to do some mornings, okay? Now, the third style of mind-based breathing technique will be a relaxing or a parasympathetic dominant breath. So that would be something like a physiological sigh. Now, a physiological sigh is basically where we take a full inhale through the nose, followed by a sip. So that sounds like this. And then we're going to let an exhale out of the mouth with a sigh. And with that exhale, you're really letting your shoulders drop, you're really letting everything go, and you're just allowing everything to relax. So we'll try that one more time. And so what that's doing is it's tapping consciously by using my mind. I'm tapping into my body's natural relaxing mechanism, which is the sigh. Now, if you ever picture someone, they're having a long day, what do? They go, they had a long day, so they sigh at the end of the day. And that's our body's way of basically downshifting our system and relaxing our system. And it's something that we can, allow the body to do by itself at the end of the day, or we can consciously cue our body to do that. And that will almost trick the body into thinking, okay, now we're going to relax. So in that way, we can use these mind-based breathing techniques, whether it's the fast, rapid breathing or the balancing breathing or the slow breathing, we can use it to basically change the state of our body consciously. So that's a really great thing. Now, what are some of the limitations or downsides of a mind-based breathing practice and only using that? Well, great thing to use as a tool, as an acute tool, okay? But what you might find is some minutes after you stand up and walk off from doing your mind-based breathing practice, you'll find that your body starts to go back to breathing in the way that it always has, okay? And that's because our breath is basically fixed in the sense of when we're born, we have a perfect breath. We can breathe in many different ways, but over time, we become accustomed and our body neuroplastically changes to breathing only in certain ways. And that kind of sets in a certain way. It's almost like imagine you hurt your leg and you develop a limp. Our body learns to, adapt and adjust around this injury that we've developed. Okay. Now, if we never go back and consciously repattern the muscles to walk in a, optimal and functional way, then we're going to just continue to walk maybe with a limp for the rest of our life, or suboptimally. The muscles will not fire in the right way. And the same can be applied actually to breathing, where maybe if we're living in a very stressful time in our life, where we're breathing a lot shallow in the chest, what'll start to happen is our body will naturally start to lose access to breathing in deeper, more voluminous ways, like down into the belly, which gives us our sense of grounding and allows the diaphragm to function properly, which is basically what's really controlling the flow of blood and oxygen and energy through the body, and bringing all this blood and energy flow down into the organs, the sexual organs, the digestive system. And without receiving proper blood flow into those areas, we can start to have an atrophy. We can start to have less breath moving in those areas, and it becomes a downward spiral, really, where we start to change the way that our body can breathe. So even with a mind-based practice, even if I'm sitting there doing a very deep meditation or a very, very deep relaxing breathing exercise, as soon as I get up and go back to my normal day, my body will simply go back to what it knows, which is returning to this maybe more shallow, stressed breath, which is where all the mind-based tools in the world will not change the underlying breathing mechanics and the way that our body breathes naturally, organically, 25,000 times a day on average. So that is where we enter the second realm over on the left-hand side here, which is body-based breathwork, okay? Now, if we talked about the limitations of the mind-based practice, it's that we are having a short-term acute change or fix in the system, but it's not creating any long-term benefit or shift or change. It takes a lot of time to really notice any difference. Now, what I love about body-based breathwork, and specifically the technique I'm trained in, which is called breath repatterning, which is a form of connected breathwork, it's a way that we can actually start to change and influence the subconscious breathing rhythms of the body, which means we can influence and change the way the body is breathing organically, naturally under the surface, 25,000 times a day on average, including when we're asleep, including when we're not even thinking about it. So that's pretty cool, pretty nice tool to have. And I'm going to explain now, hopefully, how that happens and the way that works. So as I mentioned before, if we're born with this ability to breathe in multiple different ways, kind of like when, we're born, we have the ability to learn any language. We could learn Chinese, we could learn Swahili, we could learn French. And after a number of months of being exposed only to certain sounds and languages, our brain starts to lose the ability to be as neuroplastic to learn those other languages. And at a certain point, we are so influenced by our environment that we only speak the language of our mother tongue, or that's surrounding us. And you might know and remember now, trying to learn a language later in life, or learn any skill later in life, is much harder than trying to do it when you're 3 years old. So the same applies to breathing. If we grew up in an environment that was very intense, stressful, that there was maybe a lot of energy moving, that could be a stressful household. It could also be that you grew up in the middle of the city, and that would lead to your nervous system needing to adapt and adjust to feel like this is okay. So you're not walking around feeling overwhelmed all the time. So that would lead to the tone of our nervous system being higher. And what that basically means is our body's going to breathe naturally more rapidly, and that's going to feel more like home to us, okay? Versus somebody who grew up in the middle of a farm, in the middle of the countryside, in a forest where there's only, a couple of animals around. The tone of nervous system, and therefore the quality of their breathing, is going to be much more relaxed, okay? Versus growing up in New York City, for instance. So this idea of being born with a perfect breath, but then we lose access to all ways of breathing over time, means that we get stuck in certain states, and then it's very hard to shift and change, even though that's influencing pretty much all areas of our life, including our sleep, including our digestion and our diet, including our exercise and our recovery. So the goal of body-based breathwork basically is to go back into any of these stored experiences. It can be emotions, it can be reflexes, anything that the body has maybe held onto or stored because it didn't have the capacity to process or deal with at the time. It allows us to go back and start to let go and release these deeper things. And what that allows us to do in a session is to basically then change the function of how the nervous system works and therefore change the way the body breathes 25,000 times a day on average. And basically, by using movement, sound, and breath in a session, as a facilitator, I can basically guide someone into helping their body to breathe more effectively. Now, another cool thing about this body-based breathwork is that when we come into a session, we connect or loop our breath, and that allows our conscious mind to switch off. So the thinking, rational mind gets switched off. And that allows us actually to open more up to not just our natural healing abilities in our body and to unlock them, which maybe aren't accessible on a day-to-day basis, but also deeper thoughts and insights from the subconscious, which don't always have access. Do you know, maybe sometimes you could be in the shower, or if you're a guy, maybe shaving, and then you have an insight all of a sudden for a problem that maybe you've been thinking about for a long time that you didn't have the answer to. This is the same process where we've switched off this prefrontal cortex and we're in more of a motor pattern, and this allows these insights, this deeper wisdom from the subconscious to come up and through. And it's a similar thing, kind of like that on steroids in a connected breathwork journey, where our conscious mind is completely switched off, unlike the mind-based breathing, which is where our conscious mind is active for every breath. So by disabling this conscious mind, we kind of go into this autopilot mode, and in that state, we can have these insights. Our body in this state also becomes more malleable, so it means that we can actually start to change the function of, how the body can move and how the body breathes. And if we have a long enough integration and relaxation at the end of that session, which we tend to do in our facilitated sessions, it means that we can then actually reshape and remold the way the breath and the body functions, and then that kind of sets on a deeper level where now when you walk out of the session, your body will actually breathe differently to how it was breathing before. And if that's continued over a period of a few weeks or a few sessions in a short period of time, that's when we can start to really create some deep neuroplastic change in how the body and the nervous system functions, which is pretty cool. And this is something that, if we look at, a deeper biohacking kind of lens of everyone's trying to optimize for sleep, they're trying to have the best diet, they're trying to have, the best exercise routine. But actually the one thing that is underpinning all of those is how is their body breathing when they sleep? How is their body, functioning and breathing to allow them to digest their food properly? Are they stuck in a fight or flight state, which means their body isn't digesting food properly? Or can they drop into rest and digest? Or how is their recovery for exercise? Or how is their capacity to do more exercise and to go further for longer? These are all factors that, if we think about it, the breath is kind of like the lowest hanging fruit. So we should be looking at breath before we look at any of those factors, ideally. And this is something that I've noticed in my own life and also with clients, is that as we expand our capacity in the breathwork journeys to take on more, load or more stress safely, and then to afterwards downshift and relax and improve our body's ability to deeply rest in a session, we can then access those pathways in our day-to-day lives, which means that when I'm having a fight with my partner or when I come home from a long day of work and I want to relax, it doesn't take me 3 hours to do, it takes me 15 minutes. And in that argument, I can take and hold a lot more and even have old wounds and triggers from my past come up, and I can still hold them and stay connected and have empathy and be rational and logical and not just reacting all the time. So if all of this is sounding good for you, then I'm stoked. And one more thing I want to add, if this is something that you're curious about diving into and exploring more of, in terms of the body-based breathwork side of things, is safety is something that's quite usually overlooked in that field and is super important. And how do you really know which type of breathwork or style for breathwork is for you? So the first thing I'd say is that the breathwork industry in general, because it's so new, there's very little to no barriers to entry. So pretty much anybody can go and do a 3-day online training and call themselves a breathwork practitioner. And no disrespect to them in the sense that if I was going on Instagram now and I saw that, advertisement for a training, I'd probably say, great, wow, it only takes 3 days, and I'm going to learn everything I need. And the teacher in that training would also probably tell me, now you know everything, now you're qualified, now you can do this. So I think it's less about, there being advantageous people out there and more just like a general ignorance to the power or potential challenge that can come from this work. If you had someone standing on the street corner handing out random pills and psychedelics to people, you'd probably say that's not a great thing. However, the breath, when in the wrong hands, can be as challenging as well as powerful. It's kind of one of these with great power comes great responsibility things. So there are people who do online breathwork over Zoom. There are people who do large groups, like 50 to 100 people with just one or two facilitators. And more specifically, they don't know how to read and therefore honor the nervous system and the breathing mechanics of their clients. So they're pushing people into these really activated states, and they're disassociating and they're checking out and they're, leaving their body and seeing God and all these great things that most of the people that end up coming to me say, wow, I tried breath work. I had a very challenging experience. I didn't like it. It didn't work for me. And it's usually because they've been to one of these, very over the top experiences where people are just driving people way outside their window of tolerance, which is their ability to really take something and to stay in their body and stay regulated through that experience. So the first thing, if you're looking to try this technique, I'd be looking for someone who is trained to read and repattern the mechanics of breathing, and someone who is qualified to work with trauma and ideally has done a lot of this work on themselves first. So they, in order to be an effective and humble and safe space holder, ideally we need to, at least explore a number of these things within ourselves so that we can effectively spot it and support others through it in a non-judgmental way. This is what it's really about. We're not out here trying to just heal people to boost our egos. It's about actually how can we honor the clients and honor the wisdom of that client's body and trust that they have the tools within them to find healing or find greater ease and peace in their body and to support them in that process instead of trying to fix or change or do anything. Now, one other piece when it comes to safety regarding this body-based breathwork is there are some contraindications to this work, which is that if you're pregnant, it's not really a good idea. It can trigger early labor, basically, and there's just a whole host of complications in changing the chemistry of the blood through the breath that can, cause challenge in the body. If you're someone who's a pre-existing heart conditions, if you have a history of epilepsy or seizures, not a great idea, or any mental conditions, schizophrenia, bipolar and stuff, it's not really advised to go down this route. I would suggest on that basis something that's much more gentle and more psychotherapeutic approach to those. Something that doesn't basically change or play as much with the blood chemistry in the brain and put the heart under as much pressure. So if you've been listening to this and it all checks out, it all sounds good, and you're like, hey, I want to try more, well, there's two kind of routes. As you know, there's two styles. So the first thing is with the mind-based techniques. You can go on YouTube, you can find someone who's doing this. We're going to have a couple of different practice and exercises on our YouTube channel at Really Align. I would generally recommend to people to try more of these regulating and downshifting breathing techniques because, to be honest, most people are already living at a pretty high level and high tone. They don't need more stress and intense breathing in their lives. They're probably already breathing and jacked up enough. So I would suggest actually, if you're going to use mind-based techniques, focus more on the relaxing ones and you'll get a lot of benefit out of them. They're great tools to have. If you're looking to explore, if your interest has been piqued and you want to explore the body-based side of things more, come and see us in Berlin. We've got practitioners in Germany and a few others around Europe. You can contact us at contact@reallyaligned.com or just go to our website. And we're running retreats, around the place. We got retreats in Georgia, in Greece, in Ibiza. We got one in Finland coming up next year in the ice, and just really creating experiences for business professionals, for entrepreneurs to go a little bit deeper into themselves. And they're really good, environments to come and explore more of yourself and to reconnect with your breath. And at the very basis, if you're just curious, you want to try more, just try it at one session, come to a workshop and see if it works for you. And again, as I said, if you're not in Germany or you're not thinking about visiting Bali or anything anytime soon, I would suggest just going online and finding a trauma-informed, connected breathwork practitioner and someone who can really read and spot and repattern faulty mechanics in breathing hopefully that's someone who can help you find more ease in your body. And you'll know also by the quality of the marketing that they're using. If they're using very, fear-based marketing, it's probably someone you want to avoid. You want to maybe go for someone who's a bit more talking about honoring the nervous system and working with the body to get the best outcome for that client. So I hope all of this has been insightful. I hope this has created a nice roadmap for you. I hope you now understand the difference between mind-based, body-based breathwork, the pros and cons of each, and hopefully you've got more education and knowledge now to go forward and to make a proper informed decision as to which of these modalities is best for you. My name is Pete, and it's been a pleasure guiding you in this journey. So until the next podcast, keep on breathing.